All right, guys, welcome back. And today I want to do a little quick update on the CNC situation. Some of you may already know that back in February, I had been torn for months of which CNC that I was going to order. There's lots of different brands out there. Some have some strong points and others have others, whether it be the speed, the rigidity, the affordability, shipping. There's a lot of things that you have to consider, and I covered most of that in the previous video that I did about my decision to go with the Shapeoko 5 Pro. So if that's the kind of stuff you're interested in, I'll drop a link to that video down below and you can check that one out as well. But today I want to just give you guys an update because I get a lot of emails from folks because they saw that video and they're like, hey, you've had the machine for 4 or 5 months now. What do you think about it? What are some of the things that you found that you don't like or you do like? And do you regret the purchase? And the short answer is no, I do not regret it. I'm very happy with the purchase. And today I want to kind of go over a few tweaks that I've made to my setup, things that I've figured out about the machine, and just kind of show you the projects that I'm doing and give you an idea of what to expect 4 months later after you've made your purchase. So if that's something you're into, stick around. We'll be right back. All right, guys, so as you can see, before I even bought the CNC, before I'd even decided which CNC I was going to get, I built myself a very rigid, very stable table. And the table setup, I will say, hindsight, I'm glad I did it this way. At first, I was kind of torn between, some of the other machines require a stiffer table, and this one, not so much. So I almost waited and just built a less sturdy table when I bought the machine, but I'm glad I went ahead and built myself a robust, strong table. One thing that I have learned is the more experience that you get with the machine, the faster you start running the speeds. Once you get used to the bits, it does have a pretty good bit of movement in the machine. Luckily, because I did overbuild my table, I made it very strong, very robust. I got these not so cheap rollers for the bottom of it. The casters that I've got on here are double locking, which means that when you step on the little pedal, not only does the wheel not roll, but it also will not turn. And that's something you're going to want to make sure you do, because had I not purchased these particular rollers, I could see where that would dictate into a little bit of wobble with the table when I'm doing some really fast stuff, especially when you're running something like on a 3D carve where you're running like a spiral bit. Those things move really, really fast, especially on those 3D finish passes, and that's a lot of weight to be slinging around. So if you don't have a stable platform, the whole thing's going to move. Now, is that going to cause you a problem with being able to cut or engrave? As long as the material and the machine stay with the same movement, you're good. But it could be a problem with anything else that you have sitting on your table, because the things that aren't fastened down could fall off. But as you can see, this is the 4 foot by 4 foot machine. I kind of incorporated the controller and everything into the table design when I built the table. I also have taken and cut myself some 1/2 inch plywood brackets, and through the machine, you can see where the screws are here. There are these bars that run from left to right, and when you're putting the machine together, if you've ever done that, you're familiar with those. And so what I did is I made me some little brackets that basically, once the machine is set in place, these little brackets slide onto those little rails and hold it to keep it from being able to slide on the table. Because like I said, there is a little bit of, slinging around with all this weight being thrown around. And so I wanted to make sure that my table was solid, but I wanted to make sure that the machine couldn't move on top of the table. I've seen other guys put brackets up here on the corners. With the Shapeoko 5, you do have some plugs and stuff here. These pieces on the corner have a little bit of electronics in them, as well as they're plastic, so that didn't seem like the best anchor point to me. I went with anchoring it with these aluminum bars that run across here. There's nothing in the way, nothing can get damaged. They're kind of hidden. But one of the key things that I have learned, and I kind of knew this from my experience with the smaller CNCs, dust extraction is key, guys. If you don't have good dust extraction on this thing, it's still going to get a little dusty unless you fully enclose it. It's going to generate dust in your shop. It's a workshop. That's going to happen. I have air filtration stuff for that. But all in all, with the setup that I have, running the Shopsmith chip extraction here, it does a really good job. Now, I did find when I was assembling my machine, and I just recently found this like yesterday, if you buy the advanced kit that comes with the Shapeoko, they have two different size adapters, so to say, that go with this. One is for the spindle, and one is for bigger routers or whatever possibly. But I will tell you this, if you use the appropriate one, it helps direct more of your vacuum through the dust shoe. And another thing that I've learned, and this really doesn't make a lot of sense until you really sit down and think about how air moves, is rather than have the brushes completely contact the top of the material, which you would think you would want to do, I find that I get better results with the sweeper if I leave a 1/4 of an inch or so, or even just a 1/16, but a 1/4 of an inch or so gap between the bristles and the surface of the material. Because what that does is, instead of sealing it off and causing the air to come in from the top of the dust boot and pull the chips to the back, which leaves them in the bottom down here, if you leave that raised up, especially using the Shopsmith, I've got the new 24-inch top part for the Shopsmith, which allows smaller particulates to be filtered out, and it also pulls the efficiency and the time between cleanings up on it as well. So I've got plenty of airflow. So when you raise that up, what that does is that allows the air to have a channel to come in across the work surface toward the spindle and then up. But as it goes up, before it gets to the spindle, it gets sucked out the back because of the design of this and over to the chip extraction. So it's a little counterintuitive, because you would think it would be kind of like a vacuum cleaner to where you would want those bristles to be on the surface. But in fact, I have found I get better, cleaner results by spacing those bristles up just a little bit. And that's with this setup. Not all setups are going to be the same. But with this setup, if you have this machine and this setup, I strongly recommend, if you're putting the bristles on the workpiece, try raising them up and leaving yourself an 1/8, a 1/4 of an inch. Just leave a gap at the bottom for that air to come in and see what a difference it makes. Now, I do like the skirting with the bristles, because it, the chips that are flying out, it keeps those from going anywhere. And if you do, have it set a little low, or you go across a clamp or something like that while it's moving, that affords you the opportunity not to break anything. So that's pretty cool. But I highly recommend the spindle. Guys, I had been running a router for the past 6 months before I ordered this machine on some smaller machines, and it is amazing the difference that the spindle makes. So no regrets. I've done lots of projects. You can see I've got my Clack Shack sign right there behind the machine. I've even tried my hand at doing an inlay. And although the wood that I selected, hindsight, probably wasn't the best wood, I wasn't paying attention to the grain pattern on some of my cuts, and that is very important when you're doing inlays, that you get the pattern correctly, especially if you have little small pieces that can chip off real easily. But I've made a lot of these things. And guys, I went to a cookout competition, and they were needing sticks to stir stuff with in large pots, because of these cooking competitions. They're doing, like 5, 10 gallon containers. And a buddy of mine was like, man, I need something longer than this spoon that I've got so that I can stir this with. And so I whipped up one of these and gave it to him. And since then, other people have saw them and liked the idea. And so this is one of the cool projects that I've came up with and made with the machine. Now, I know Carbide 3D has a software that comes with the machine. It works great. I do use, as you can see, I use the Carbide Motion to control the machine. I like using Carbide Motion to control the machine because I'm still learning speeds and feeds. So there's a lot of times when I design a file, and in that file, I use the default speeds, whether it be the speeds that I get from Cody from my Genie bits, or whether it gets the speeds that I get from Garrett over at IDC, or whether it's a generic bit or a bit that I ordered from Shapeoko. I start with those settings, but I am finding more and more that the settings that I get sent with those bits, this machine can push those things a lot faster. So I like the fact that in Carbide Motion, once you get the machine going and it's in the cut, you can sit there and you can bump it up to 200% of the speed that was programmed for it to run. And I find myself doing that more often than not. And so then what I will do is I will notate that I'm able to run twice the speeds that is currently saved in my tool library. and I'll go over after the job is completed and I've confirmed that that's a good speed and feed, and I'll update my tool database. And being able to play with that speed in increments of 10%, that's a pretty big deal for somebody like myself that's really having to learn these speeds and feeds. A lot of machines don't offer that, many of them do, but I think that is definitely a plus with this machine, being able to actually control things while the job is running. So I prefer, for my file design, and mostly because I got used to it, using it with other machines, I use VCarve. And I've got VCarve Pro for my PC. I have ran VCarve desktop, but once you get to this size machine, it's no longer supported by VCarve desktop. Well, the machine is still supported, but your project size is limited. Let's put it that way. And so in order to take advantage of the full work area of my machine, I had to go ahead and bite the bullet and upgrade to VCarve Pro. And I'll have links to everything down below, guys, and I've also got a link down below to VCarve, Vectric, Shapeoko. Everybody involved in this build, if you're interested, there are links down below. Those are affiliate links. The setup has worked flawlessly. I do have the capability to do 8-foot sheets of plywood with this machine, and the way that I've got it set up, and I've got my other table here on the same type of locking rollers that I have on this one. All I have to do is unlock this table, roll it over that way, and then once I roll it out of the way, I can unlock this table, roll it away from the wall, and I can feed an 8-foot sheet of plywood through the machine if needed. Now, realistically, since I've had the machine, I've only had maybe 2 instances where I've used the full 4-foot by 4-foot. I like the 4-foot width. It makes it really easy, especially if you just go to Home Depot or Lowe's and you pick up a 2-foot by 4-foot piece of plywood. You don't have to break it down to put it on the machine. Really the only reason that I went ahead and went with the 4-foot by 4-foot was because I knew there would be those times where I was like, I want to do something 4-foot by 4-foot, but I don't want to have to tile it and do it that way. Probably could have made it on 99% of the jobs with the 4-foot by 2-foot. But hey, for the price difference between the two, I opted to go ahead and go with the 4-foot by 4-foot and just deal with the fact that I'm losing 2 more feet of space out here in my little walkway. But all in all, guys, like I said, everything works well with it. My setup is kind of self-contained. I've got everything there. One thing that I will tell you, if you do get one of the Shapeoko files with the spindle that I have found, is the bit 0 that comes with the machine comes with this magnet, and if you're running a router, you will definitely have to use that. I can attest to the fact that if you're running a router, you're going to need to use this magnet. But if you order it with the spindle kit, the cool thing is, because the spindle is connected to the controller and everything's all tied together, I have found that I do not need the magnet with the spindle. Once the bit touches, it works flawlessly. I haven't had any issues with not getting a ground to trigger the sensor. Everything works as it should. I've also been kind of playing around with different methods of hold down. I typically will use the regular little, the green holders that come with the machine. They work surprisingly well. They look a little cheap when you first look at them, but they work really well. And if you hit them with a bit, and yes, guys, I have on one occasion, the good news is they cut really cleanly and really smooth. They don't hurt the bit. And to be honest, as long as the thing's on there straight, you really can't tell you cut it, other than this little shoulder will get a little shorter. So they work really well, and they're not risking damaging your bits. I also use X-Fasten tape to hold things to the bed, but I will tell you that if you're going to be using the X-Fasten tape, you get a lot of fine dust on the bed of your CNC. Make sure you clean that off, blow it off with an air hose, vacuum it really good, just get it nice and clean, smooth. You don't want any sawdust on there. And do the same thing to the back of your workpiece, because the more surface contact and less dust and stuff you have, the better hold you're going to get with this tape. Now, one warning, if you're using compression bits or an upcut bit and you use this, you're going to gunk up your cutter just a little bit, and you're going to have to clean that. But I have found that if I use downcut bits and a downcut only, not a compression, but a downcut only bit, this stuff, it more or less pushes chips into the tape and renders the tape not sticky by the time the bit actually contacts it. And so far, using down cut onlys when I'm cutting through to the tape has prevented me from having to clean up any bits. So that's a little tip for you if you hadn't figured that one out already. But other than that, if I'm engraving and engraving only, this stuff works great. You don't have to worry about no matter what kind of bit you're using. If you're not going to be going all the way down to where the tape is, it's not going to contact the bit, not going to cause you any problems. But guys, all in all, I love the purchase. Like I said, I do have my little fire extinguisher over here also for some of you folks, the safety conscious folks, which I am safety conscious. I just don't harp on it. But you know, with a CNC, you do have a bit spinning at a high RPM or in wood, so enough friction could ignite a fire, especially with all these little fine, really dry dust particles around. So always keep something like that handy just in case, and always keep an eye on your machine. I know it's tough, especially if the job takes a long time, but guys, it's kind of critical that you do so. If nothing else, at least be in the room with it. That way you can smell smoke. You don't got to be watching it, but be in the room with it. But other than that, guys, I'm running a relay. That's one more good thing that I learned, and I'll point that out as well. I'm running a relay that controls my air assist also, or my chip extraction. And the cool thing about this one was I thought I would have to have the relay from Shapeoko in order to run that. But I have found that with the spindle, you don't have to worry about that. If you take your spindle controller and you plug it directly into, and I'll put a link to it down below, the relay that you can get on Amazon, you plug that spindle box, the main power to the spindle box, straight into that. When that spindle turns on, it will actually activate your chip extraction just automatically. No special equipment or special settings required. The only guess that I have for that is that the majority of the power provided for it goes through the connection to the controller, and the only time it really draws from the transformer that's in there that plugs to that is when the spindle actually activates. I was a little afraid because there are lights and stuff that stays on the controller. I was a little afraid that it would try to turn it on all the time, but that's not the case. Whether it's sensing the amperage that's being pulled or what, I don't know. All I know is it works. So if you have this machine and you want automatic chip extraction, I'll drop the link for the relay and you can grab that. So I'm going to walk around and show you a few of the things that I have added. All right, guys, as you can see, no shortage of routers around here. I've got a wired router there, as well as my cordless, extra bits and storage all under there. My original plan was to keep wood and materials under there, but it's turned into more of a just keep your junk around. I did find that my mounting my emergency stop button there, that sometimes when I was removing fasteners or connecting fasteners, I would bump into that. So I 3D printed myself a little cover to put over it, custom for the way that I had it mounted, and since putting that on there, I haven't messed up any jobs by accidentally pressing that button. So word of advice, guys, if you're going to be doing this, move the button over to the side somewhere and don't have it near the middle of the work area. Also, I'm using some magnets right here to kind of hold on to my tools. Those are the tools needed to change out the bits, and that's really handy because you don't have to worry about them vibrating and falling off the table. As well as over here, I made this little box. Hindsight, should have made it a little bigger, but that holds my bit zero. It holds the clamps and the necessary Allen wrenches to attach the clamps. And I have magnets over in the right corner of that. And then over here, this is where I keep my little cutoff tool there. I use, for removing items that are taped down, I use that little chisel right there because it works really well for getting underneath the material on top of those aluminum extrusions that are in there, and you can knock those things out. And then, of course, I have my shop vac over here that I use for cleanup and that kind of thing. The chip extraction, like I said, it's the Shopsmith. This is by far, guys, the quietest, most effective chip extraction that I've ever had. Still use that guy for my old power tools and stuff, but I am quickly thinking that maybe I just leave that in place for the planer and connect this, but we're going to cross that bridge another day. But the hose basically comes up, goes across my little arm over here, and then comes back down to the machine. One problem that I did have to address with the 3D printer as well is that hose kept slapping the top of the stepper, And I don't have a problem with static electricity in my setup, but just in case, I wanted to kind of try to keep it from doing that as much as I could help. So I 3D printed me a little sleeve that goes down into there and just basically stiffens that hose to get it above that stepper for when I'm running it. All right, and so on this side, guys, you can see there's my Genie bit holder that I made. Haven't got the full collection yet. I'm working on that. I'm having to pace myself. And there's my little brackets that I made. I got 3 of them on each side. Those connect to the frame of the machine to keep it from moving around on me. For controlling the CNC, I picked up this little jewel for $125 on Amazon. It's a refurbed Dell mini PC. Works great. It came preloaded with Windows 10. It came with a wired mouse and keyboard, but of course, wired mouse and keyboard was not something that I wanted to use. So I got myself, which I already had this, I just wasn't using it. I got myself my little wireless keyboard, made me a little keyboard holder for it there, so it's actually portable if I want to, and set it up there. The next step that I'm going to do, guys, is going to be a Xbox controller that I will use to control the machine. I've figured out how to do that, and I'm going to get one and get it set up. But yeah, there's the inlay that I did and some of the other projects I've been working on this week. But yeah, so far so good, guys. All right, guys, I just wanted to knock out a quick update for you guys because I keep getting messages and emails asking me, because a lot of you guys are in the same situation that I was, trying to decide which way to go. Of course, I would consider there to be 4 major manufacturers, 3 of which are really close contenders right now in the market, and Carbide 3D with the Shapeoko 5 is definitely a good contender in that group as far as price and what you get. And guys, it's just a really cool looking machine too, so that helps. But like I said, there will be links down below if you're interested in any of the stuff that we talked about in the video. And until next time, guys, be safe and have a good day.